One of the biggest mistakes that home buyers can make before they start the home buying process is to not do their budgeting up front. Hi, I'm Andrew Westhof with Homes Mortgage Lending, and today we're going to talk about budgeting. If you want to get additional information about mortgage tips, interest rate updates, and personal finance, please subscribe to my channel. If you're looking to purchase a home in the state of Michigan, I'm licensed anywhere in the state of Michigan and would love to help out. So all my contact information is in the video description. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help. So without further ado, let's get into it. So it's really important that you do your budget before you start the home search process so that you know what price range that you want to be looking in, that you know that monthly payment goal, and you can relay that to your loan officer. The math that we as lenders use to determine the maximum that we can qualify you for on a home purchase is pretty basic. We certainly don't know all of your financial information after we run our numbers. And it's also very liberal, meaning that we'll certainly qualify you for a payment that's likely higher than you'd feel comfortable paying on a monthly basis. We will let you be home poor. So it's a lot better of an idea to find out what's comfortable for you on a monthly payment and relay that to your loan officer so that we can pre-approve you for an amount that meets that goal. One side note on this is that when you do get pre-approved, that pre-approval amount's not set in stone. So if we're not maxing out your pre-approval and we pre-approve you for an amount that you want to start the home search at and find out you need to increase that later because you're not seeing homes that meet your needs in that price range, obviously you would want to do your budget, make sure that you can make that higher payment if you are increasing your pre-approval amount. But we can update your pre-approval letter at a later time if that's something that happens. And then another really important thing when you're looking to purchase a home is if you don't have savings for your down payment and closing costs yet, or at least not all of them, talking with the lender to find out what that amount is going to need to be is going to be helpful. And then you can set your budget with that savings goal in mind to try to reach that goal, by the time you want to start the home search. So any good lender is going to be happy to walk through some numbers with you to give you a hypothetical amount that you should be saving for your total out of pocket. And it can be surprising. Everybody knows you have a down payment amount. You may be surprised that you don't need as much as you thought you did for the down payment if you want to put a little bit less down, how that affects your payment. But a lot of home buyers, especially first-time home buyers, are often surprised by how much you need for your closing costs and your escrow account setup. So talking through those numbers up front is going to be helpful so you're saving for the right amount. I would also encourage you to save more than what you need out of pocket for the lender because first of all, there's oftentimes some costs that are going to come up that are very common that you want to be able to handle if they come up. For instance, you will almost certainly be doing a home inspection. Most lenders don't require a home inspection, so we don't include it in any of our cost worksheets. You may will have some moving costs, some furnishing costs for the new place. As you start your home search, you may find the perfect home, but it may need some updates or some maintenance to make it really what you want it to be. So having that little bit of additional is certainly helpful. And then most importantly, you want to have some additional because you don't want to buy a home and have $0 in the bank. Inevitably, that's when the water heater is going to go out or something's going to happen where you have some expenses. Buying a home in general is usually a very good financial decision, but you don't want to chase a really good financial decision with a bad one and have to put a water heater on a high-interest credit card because there was no money left over after you got in the home. You don't want to be eating ramen noodles and beans because you just bought your dream home. And then just to kind of piggyback off of that, regardless of buying a home, it's always good to have as an emergency fund. There's a lot that financial advisors don't agree on. Many have very varying ideas of how you should be managing your money, what you should be investing in, things like that. But almost universally, financial advisors will tell you that you should have 3 to 6 months in an emergency fund so that you can pay for things out of pocket instead of financing them when things go wrong. I know that can be a tall order when you're thinking about buying a home, especially if it's your first home, to establish an emergency fund and have money for down payment, closing costs, and an escrow account. However, you do want to have at least a little bit left over, and then you should be prioritizing an emergency fund shortly after the home purchase to get an additional cushion in your bank account. Because when you have a home, you're going to have to pay maintenance, repairs, things are going to come up. So there's a little bit more outgoing for homeowners than for renters. And just to kind of, for an idea for when you're doing your budgeting as well, it's a good idea to budget about 1 to 2% of the purchase price of the home for annual maintenance and repair costs. I'm not a budgeting guru by any means. I do have a pretty good base knowledge. I do budget myself, and I look at clients' financial situations on a daily basis, and have done some research. So I want to share with you some basics and what I think is the best starting point. And then the good news is there are some really good financial gurus out there, some that I utilize and other clients of mine have utilized that are very helpful. So I will share some resources with you as well so that you can, go as in-depth as you would like to for your budgeting. But I'm going to go off of kind of what the basics are. So the first thing that I want you to know is when you start budgeting, there is some work involved, but not as much as you might think, and it's not as mathematical as you might think. You don't have to be a math whiz to be good at budgeting. It's much more psychological and habit. So being able to budget on a regular basis is going to help you in many ways. And the truth of the matter is that most people don't budget. Most Americans don't budget. Around 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. About half of Americans earning over $100,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck. So it's kind of the norm to just spend your money, make your money and spend it. But if you get away from that even just a little bit, it can be life-changing as far as the stresses and burdens that go along with living paycheck to paycheck. So that should be the main goal with budgeting, regardless of being a homeowner or not being a homeowner, is not living paycheck to paycheck and establishing a savings goal each month, and being much more intentional with your spending and how you manage your money. So here's the general idea. You can look up YouTube, TikToks, Google, and you can find a million different ways that people budget, and they'll swear by this is the best way. My thought is that the best budget is the one that you stick with, and so this is the basics that you can build off of. At a minimum, I suggest doing a budget where you are looking at your finances at least once a month. So the starting point is, if you aren't budgeting at all right now, setting a date each month. I like to do the first weekend of the month and just looking at how much do I have in the savings and checking account, how much did I spend last month, and then from there setting a goal for the next month of how much you want to save. And it doesn't have to be I'm going to cut my spending to the bone so that I can save as much as possible. That's not necessarily the goal. In fact, oftentimes when you're doing that, you get really discouraged because you don't meet those goals, and it's really changing your lifestyle and you don't stick to the budget. It's more of, how much do I think I should be able to save? Writing that down and then revisiting it the following month. If you met that goal, great, but still look at your numbers and see, did I spend more or less on certain things than I thought I was going to? If you didn't meet that goal, why not? And then setting another goal for the next month, and just doing that every single month. It'll take a little more time initially because you have to kind of dig down and think about what your monthly bills are, what some things are coming up that next month. But then as you go on month after month, this is something that my wife and I have done for quite a while, and it's usually a 15-20 minute process. So it's not that difficult. Now, more recently, I've started using You Need a Budget app. I've used budgeting apps in the past and didn't really find one that I loved, so was kind of doing just the monthly thing on my own. But You Need a Budget has been really cool. So I'm going to share a link to that, as well as I think it's a good idea to try to find an application that works, because that technology can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. It can categorize your expenditures and kind of use technology to point you in the right direction in a lot of ways. What I've actually been doing more recently is looking at my budget more on a weekly, sometimes even a couple of times a week. But you don't have to go that far in depth. I'm doing that more because I want to, and I want to see, hey, how did this week go? How did the next week go? This is something where you can get really in depth and become like a crazy frugal budgeter, and it can be life-changing in that aspect. But just the fact that looking at it on a monthly basis is very much psychological and helpful, and that when you're spending money, you're much more intentional about how you spend it. You'll think more about decisions that you make. And that's the biggest thing. Most Americans, we like to live, when something comes up we want to do, we just go do it, we spend the money, and rationalize it later. If you're thinking about it up front, when you go, well, in a month from now, I know I'm going to look at that expenditure, and it's going to affect what my savings goal and things like that. will make you think a little bit more and just kind of starts forming a lot better habits with your money. And then I'm going to share a link from NerdWallet that has a list of in their opinion, the 10 best apps for budgeting and the pros and cons to each. And then I'm also going to share, you may or may not have heard of it, but it's called Money Mustache, Mr. Money Mustache rather. And it's a blogger, and he is a very much frugal, cut spending as much as possible to live a lot more simple life and save a lot more money and retire early is kind of the goal in financial freedom. So it's a really cool if you want to do that. If not, no big deal. I certainly don't want to do that. But one of the cool things about his blog and website is you can sign up for 50 newsletters, and they come out each week, and they're in order. So you're starting from newsletter 1 and kind of going through his philosophy, and there's a lot of good general information in there, such as one of the recent ones that I read was about how if you get kind of caught in a trap of putting money on a credit card that you're not paying off every single month, how much that interest is charging you over the amount of time it takes you to pay it off at certain interest rates. Things like that just kind of make you think about what you're actually doing on a regular basis and how you're managing money to make better decisions. So those are the two big things that I'm going to share, the app, and then You Need a Budget. One other sidetrack on You Need a Budget, because I'm a huge fan. They have a podcast as well, which is really good. And I like You Need a Budget because they're more of a kind of an every man, every woman, every person type of an app, where they're not looking at the budgeting as you need a budget and cut all of your costs. They're looking at it as more of a managing your money in a better, more intentional way. So that's really it. I hope that this has been helpful. Again, the biggest thing is that you just got to do it every single month, and it will, especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck now, or even if you're not really meeting your financial goals, aside from buying a home, it can be super beneficial. But the stakes are higher when you're a homeowner, so having a budget is really key, and knowing what those goals are, especially when you're buying a home. What I see, a big mistake, what I mentioned at the beginning, is not doing a budget. What I see a lot of people do, especially first-time buyers, is they see friends or family buying homes in certain price range. They kind of do a little mental math and go, they're making about what I'm making, so if they can afford it, I can afford it. Well, I see people's finances on a regular basis, and I can tell you that, one, a lot of people are very much overpaying and putting themselves in a maybe not the best situation when they're buying a home or buying anything for that matter, cars, vacations, etc. And then two, you don't really know everyone's financial situation. So a lot of times I have clients that don't really expect that they're going to have much help, but hey, they might have a 50% down payment because they've got some folks in their lives that are willing to help them, and that's how they're being able to afford that $400,000 when normally they'd be buying a $200,000 house. So just a little something to think about. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses. That's how you go broke. And if you have any questions, put them in the comment. Again, all of my contact information is in the description. If this was helpful, please hit the like button so the YouTube algorithm can do its thing and help other people find this as well. And I hope to see you on the next video. Thank you so much.